Yep, and that's it. I'm live, and what I'm planning on doing right now is I'm going to clone a game that's one of the top games of 2016. It's called Color Switch. Now, if you're not familiar with it, that's okay. But a lot of people, and actually a lot of my students and friends, have been saying that they want to work on Color Switch and do some kind of a clone and try to improve on the game and make their own for the app stores and the Google Play Store and the iTunes Play Store as well. So what I'm planning to do is get a kickstart for everyone so that you get what it takes to be able to clone the game. And we're going to do this using Unity. Why Unity? Well, for multiple reasons. One, because once it's done with Unity, I'll be able to deploy it in multiple platforms, obviously iPhones, Androids, but also on the web. So that's, again, to get as many target devices as possible. And two, because Unity is great for physics. It's super easy to use physics, especially in 2D. But before I even get there, I want to give you a little overview of what Color Switch is, just in case you don't know. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. Now you should be able to see my screen. And here I'm going to look for Color Switch. So inside of YouTube, just look for Color Switch. Right, and this demo will do just fine. All right, so this is the game. You're just basically controlling this ball, and the ball will change color every time it touches a checkpoint, and then you have to go through all these specific shapes. Some are rectangles, some are lozenges, some are squares and circles, or just pure bars. And what you have to do is go through them. And you can only pass through if you pass through the same color. But guess what? The colors switch every time. And that's what this game is all about. So the game itself is very simple, but it's very hard to master. As you can see, it can become very difficult. Okay, so right now it's blue. So the guy can only go through blue, and then the purple, and then now it can only go through yellow, and so on. All right, so the first step that I'm going to do right now is to work on the mechanics. All right, and most particularly the game mechanics of the ball, to be able to get that ball to keep going up and up like that, okay? And I'm going to do this in 2D using Unity, and then we're going to move to creating all the obstacles and the circles and so on, and also getting points every time we go through, then the switching of colors, and then we'll think about how to deploy the game and publish the game on multiple platforms. Then we also create the menu items. And once we have that, we also want to monetize the app. So if we want to monetize the app, we definitely need to use some kind of advertising networks and in-app purchases as well, maybe to remove the ads. And then we want to improve the game so that we don't just do a clone, but we also make a better game, and we need to find ways to make this a better game. Now, if you think about any way to make this game better, or you already have ways and you want to share the information with me, make sure you can message me at info.appsfresh.com, and I'll make sure I read your email, and I can share it with other people if you want to or not. Okay, and once we do that, then we can try to make the game better together. Okay, and I'm sure that's going to benefit everyone here. All right, having said so, let's go ahead and start. All right, so inside of Unity, I just launched Unity. If you don't know what Unity is, it's an engine, a game engine to make games, obviously. So you can just type Unity download, and you will end up on the page to download Unity here. Unity 3D, get Unity download. All right, I'm not going to go through this. It's pretty simple and straightforward. It's actually free to use for personal use, so go for it. All right, I have Unity here. I'm going to create a new project, and I'm going to create a 2D project. Because the game is in 2D, I could do a 3D project. It's also very cool, but 2D will do just fine. Now, the new Unity project name, I'm going to call this one Color Switch, and I'm going to create the project. Now, I'm going to select where I want to create that, and I'm going to do this inside of my hard drive. Now, feel free to save it anywhere you'd like, okay? You don't have to do the same thing as what I am doing. Okay, I'm going to create a new folder, Unity Color Switch. All right, and choose. All right, Now I'm going to create the project. All right, and now it's loading, and it's going to import just the regular assets, almost no assets, as you can see. My asset folder is empty, and that's okay. I don't need much right now. I just need the main camera, and that's good. All right, so this is a project. First thing is to create a scene. Now I can just already save that by pressing Command S or just Control S, and just save this scene in the asset. And I'm going to call this one main, and then save. All right, and now I have an empty scene, but it's still a working game. All right, now at this point, the next thing I want to do is create the ball. And the easiest way to create the ball is to use prototypes. Right now, I'm not going to create all the details and all the different colors yet. I'm just going to create a very simple prototype, and then we'll go and add all the user interface and all the game design later. So first of all, I'm going to click on Game Object, and here I'm going to use a 2D object, and we can create a sprite. Now, one thing here is that if I do that, that's okay, but I don't have any sprites yet. So I'll have to create a sprite myself. And as you can see, it's just an empty sprite. And there isn't much going on here. It's just empty. So something else I could do is create a circle. And as you can see, inside of game objects, you can see that we have 2D objects and 3D objects, like a cube and so on. So what you could do is use a 3D object here to create a 2D object. So you can definitely add some kind of a sphere. And if you go to the scene here, you'll see the sphere. But guess what? The sphere only looks in 2D because we created a 2D scene. So it's up to you at this point. This could be more than enough. It could do just fine. Now, I'm just going to delete the new sprite and just work with that sphere. And I'm going to call this one sphere and then player. Okay? Why player? So that I know that it's the main player. It's what the player controls. All right. Now, what I want to do is add some color. Right now, it's like all black. So how do you add color? Well, first thing you can do is to create lighting. So I'm going to go to a game object and go to light, and we can create a directional light. And as soon as I do this, look what happened. We see the sphere that just popped here. Now, something that you notice now, this is not just a plain sphere like it is in the game. Because if you look at their game, it's just a plain sphere. Now, this is totally doable by changing the color, the intensity of the light. I can completely burn the intensity and play with this and remove the shadows and things like that, and that will do what we have there. But I actually think that it actually looks better with that, so I'm going to leave that. Okay, all right. Now you can play with so we have the directional light. If I go to the scene, I can see that we have the sphere and the directional light here. Now, I can play with my directional light to move it around so that what would happen by moving it around, the light effect would change in the sense that instead of having the light effect coming from the side, it would come from somewhere else. So I could play with the rotation. Check this out. Right now, the light is at 50 on the X and negative 30 on the Y, but if I put 0, you see that it's changing. So the light moves from one side to the next. So I could just like move it around, and you can see the light is just moving around. So at this point, it's up to you and see where you want the light to be. But the original light was just fine, so I'm going to leave it just the way it is. All right. Now, the next step is to try to make this bounce. But before I want to do so, I want to add a base. Why do I want to add a base? Because I want it to not just fall and keep falling. I want it to stop falling so that I can easily control it. Now, again, there are many ways to add a base, but a quick way is to go to Game Object and click on 3D Object. And here we can just add, let's say, a cube. All right, so I have the cube that's right above it. So I'm going to take that cube and modify it. I'm going to put it down. So on the y-axis, I'm going to move it down. And here I'm moving it to, let's say, negative 2.5. Okay, so it's right below, but I want to make it bigger. So in the scale, on the z-axis, on the x-axis, I'm going to increase the x-axis scale so that it becomes more wider. All right, and I'm going to go all the way. Here we go. And for the y-axis, I'm going to increase that as well to take more room. Here we go. And I'm going to move it down even more. All right, so technically we have a base now. So we have a ball and a base that can bounce around it. But, so if we want it to bounce, we need to add physics. And as you can see, the cube already comes with a box collider. That's great. And the sphere comes with also a sphere collider. So it knows when both of them can collide together. But the next thing we want to do is add some physics elements to that. And first, you can select the sphere and go to game object. I'm sorry, you go to components and go to physics 2D. And you can add any of these physics objects. And the first, what you want to do is probably add gravity or a constant force. One or the other might work. It's up to you at this point. If you add a constant force, that would always push it in one direction, okay? But if you add a rigid body in 2D, it will have also the option to have gravity, which is also a constant force, but downward. So I'm going to click on rigid body 2D. And it says that it has a conflicting component because it already has it. And the reason why it has it is that because it has a sphere collider here. Okay, so we could technically remove that and try to add it. It might work, it might not, because I might have to add a 3D body. Let's see. Yes, that's the thing. As you can see, it's a conflict because I added a sphere that's a 3D sphere, and it's complaining because the rigid body is a 2D one. So what I could do is add a 2D object or sprite, or what I could do is now add a physics force, which would be this time a regular physics and not a 2D physics. But since we want to learn 2D and not 3D, I don't want you to be confused between 3D and 2D, so we're only going to touch 2D. And in this example, we had a sphere that's 3D and a cube that's 3D. So if we want to work with 2D forms, we have to create them ourselves. And as you can see, there is no other way right now. I wish that whenever we went to 2D objects, we were able to create our shapes right here. But that's not a problem. We can easily create them, and I'm going to show you how to create them right now. I'm going to open Photoshop to do that. Now, Photoshop is not the only tool to create these objects. And by the way, all the assets that I'm going to create here, you will be able to download them later on appsfresh.com. Okay, so let me just show you the website where you can download them later on. So you could go to appsfresh.com, and here you could just like type in the search for color switch, and you'll be able to find that. Okay, having said so, let's go back. And inside of Photoshop, I'm going to create the sphere. So I'm going to do a new file, and I'm going to create a small sphere. Let's say 60 by 60. That's it. All right, and press OK. And now, as you can see, this is pretty small, and I'm going to create a sphere inside of this. So I'm going to take this rounded rect or the elliptical tool and just create a sphere that's going to be a white sphere. Why am I creating a white sphere? Well, because what's going to happen is that the sphere will change color. So we want it to be white first so that we can change colors later by applying different effects. All right, so I'm going to remove what's inside of this and just do a sphere. I'm going to zoom in. All right, and now I can create a sphere inside of this. Now, here, whenever we're inside of Photoshop, the sphere starts at the center, so I need to be at the center. And now I'm going to create the sphere by pressing the Shift key down so that I can have the width and the height that's identical. All right, and that will do just fine. And I'm going to move it a little bit up. Here we go, and that's it. We have a sphere. Now I'm going to save that. I'm just going to save it for web, Command-Alt-Shift-S as a PNG file so that it keeps the alpha transparency. And I'm going to save that. And I'm going to call this one sphere. That's it. And I'm going to save this inside of my desktop and save. All right, so now I'm going to create also the floor. So to be able to create the floor, I'm just going to create a new file, Command-N, and I'm going to create it. Let's say it's going to be very long. So let's say 500 here, and the height just 250. All right. And now what I'm going to do is leave it this color. It's fine if it's white, and I'm going to save that. That could be a JPEG, but I'm going to save it as a PNG, and I'm going to call this one floor.png. All right, save. Okay, so I'm done for now with Photoshop. I'm going to close Photoshop completely. Again, you can do this with GIMP, so you can go to gimp.org and download GIMP. It's totally free to use, and you can achieve the exact same thing as what I just did. Okay, there's so many ways nowadays to create, 2D art. You can even draw it yourself on your phone and save it for your computer. All right. Now, the next step I want to do is import that here. But before I do so, I'm going to remove the cube and I'm going to remove the sphere. Okay, so I'm just going to leave in the 2D world. Now, I'm going to my desktop and I'm going to select the floor and the sphere that I just created. And I'm going to drag and drop them inside of the Unity asset folder. Okay, right here, drag and drop it, and it's going to add them right there. Now, something very important, if you want to be able to use them, you have to select them both and go to the inspector and make sure that these are sprites, okay? Sometimes there will be textures and this won't work. They need to be sprites and then click on apply. All right, now I can take my sphere and just add it to the scene. And boom, here it is. Excellent. Next thing I want to do is add the floor as well. So I'm going to drag and drop the floor, and here it is, perfect. I'm going to move the floor down by moving its position, and I'm going to scale it on the x-axis. And here we go. Let's go with 3.5. Okay. Let's go with 4. Okay, perfect. So as you can see now, I have the sphere and I have the floor, and we already have a light that's already applied. If I remove the light, check this out. The colors stay. Apparently, we don't need the light here, okay? But we can probably change the light here, and that would affect it. Apparently not, so that's good. Anyway, moving on. Now that we have this, we need to add physics again. And what we could do is select the sphere, and now that the sphere is a 2D object, it's a sprite, we can add the physics that are 2D physics. Again, component, physics 2D, and I'm going to add a rigid body. All right. Now that I have a rigid body, if you look at it, you can use the gravity, okay? So it has many different constraints that you can add: is kinematic, angular drag, linear drag, mass, gravity scale, and so on. And now, what I would want you to do is press play and see what it does, okay? So you can just go and press play. And as you can see, the ball started moving downward. Now, the reason why it did this is that because it has a mass and it's automatically using the physics gravity. And if you wonder what happened to the gravity, it's because by default, the physics of Unity has gravity, but you can always change that if you want by going inside of the build settings, and then you can just go in the player settings and you can change the gravity here. You have like options to change all different variables of the environment. But we're not going to do this because we do want a gravity that works like that. All right. However, if you want it to go and slow down, you can put like a smaller mass or put more drag, okay, more linear drag. But anyway, what we have right now, it's pretty good. And the next step we want to do is make sure that whenever this touches the floor, we want it to be able to stop. And one way to do this is to select the floor, and now we need to add what we call the components to be able to have colliders so that it knows that it collided. So click on component and add the colliders. Physics, add a box collider. All right, so if you go to the scene, you see now there's a green line around the box, and this green line is the collider. Now we need to add one for the box, for the sphere as well. But I'm going to move the sphere a little bit up so that we can see it. Okay, so I'm moving the sphere right there. Okay, as you can see, it was right on the camera, so I'm moving it up. And I'm going to select the sphere and actually the sphere, the floor now, and add, I'm sorry, the sphere, and add a rigid body as well. Now I can see that there's already a rigid body here, and that's good because we just did actually. But we need to add also a box collider or a sphere collider. Physics 2D. Let's select the sphere collider, which would be circle. Why? Because a sphere in 2D is a circle. All right. And as you can see, we have a circle collider, and it's totally fine. It's right exactly where we want it. But if somehow it's not, you can always take the insets and move it around, okay? Just by doing this like that. But I'm not going to do that. It's good just the way it is. All right. And now what we could do is see what happens with the colliders. Now I'm going to press play and check this out. So it's still going through. So maybe you're wondering, why is it still going through? And we need to work on that as well. Okay. So we have the floor with the box collider, but the floor does not have any physics object. So the floor right now is ignored by the physics. So if you want this to become a physical object, you need to add the component, physics 2D, and we're going to add a physics body. Now, one thing when you add the physics body is that this can move as well. So make sure that you have to also add the rigid body. And it says that it's conflicting because the floor conflicts with the existing box collider. Okay, so I'm going to remove the box collider and now add it. So component, physics 2D, and I'm going to add the rigid body. Oh, I guess I need to completely remove it. So I'm going to right click and delete. So click on the component and remove component. And now game object, component, physics 2D, box collider. I'm sorry, rigid body. Here we go. Now, something that you want to do, because look, if I press play, look what happens. If I press play, both of them are going down, right? We have the floor that's going down and the sphere that's going down. And we definitely don't want that. We want the floor to stay where it is. So select the floor and go to the constraints and add the freeze position on the X, Y, and freeze the rotation on the Z. Now, if you press play, check this out. If you press play, we have the ball that still goes through. So we need to be able to have the collision and tell the ball to stop right there. Okay? All right. So I'm going to pause for now because I gotta go, and then we're going to do this very soon.